That is massive, because I think if you're somebody that's mentally resilient, and it doesn't matter how old you are, I speak to 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and you think, oh my God, they're so resilient for their age. That's what we need in this industry, because we are going to come out of this, but we're going to have another downturn at some point. There's cycles, it's going to happen. You need people that can cope with the ups and downs. It's not even just the next downturn in the market. If you think about recruitment in general, every day there's ups and downs. So, your data's not going to be great, because you're not going to be getting, okay, the call data numbers might be good, but if you go on from that and look at the data around how many meetings are getting booked, how many jobs are getting picked up, how many candidates are being placed, all that stuff, it's not going to work out, because they're just focused on, if you get so fixated on data, that's going to flow to your people. If your focus is taken away from the people as well, and all those things we've already talked about, like the employees being vulnerable, connecting with them, communicating, all that stuff, I've seen it happen. You're gonna suffer, you're gonna notice, the culture starts to change.
Welcome to The Staffing Ring, the podcast where the gloves come off and we go deep into the recruitment industry's best practices and tactics. We aim to bring you actionable insights for how staffing and recruiting agencies are winning today. This production is brought to you by Ringover, the leading staffing communication platform connected to your ATS and CRM, empowering conversations for your recruiters.
Welcome to another episode of The Staffing Ring. I'm very happy to welcome Kate O'Neill. Welcome, Kate.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Very excited to go deep into recruitment solutions and coaching with you, Kate. So before we get into that, if you could share with the audience a quick intro about yourself and what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in recruitment now it's 12 years this month. So I've got a background as a consultant, a manager, leading a division. But I set my coaching and training business up in 2021 in the January. So I've worked for the last 4 years with recruitment businesses, helping their consultants improve and develop, and the management teams. And then very recently, 1st of October, I set my second recruitment business up, which is a rack-to-rack agency, which is all about bringing more trainees into recruitment, and they'll already be trained by me. So it's just setting them up for success and making it more accessible for agencies to bring new people in. So yeah, that's me in a very quick nutshell, basically.
Brilliant. And it really hits on a big pain point, doesn't it? And I saw in your website where you say, like many others, I fell into recruitment. And I think we hear that over and over again. And then on the back end, we see the churn of recruiters who didn't quite make it for various reasons.
Yeah, I know.
So I'd love to get into a lot of how agencies can really think about solving that issue. So let's get started. So in terms of, 2024 and moving into 2025 now, what are you seeing as the big dynamics of the market? What was the landscape look like for you?
I think the reality is, and we all know that this has been, it's been a difficult couple of years. For my business, it's been this year that's been the most difficult. I did okay. Last year was a really good year for me, but in terms of the market, the last couple of years have been difficult. And, I think I've only spoken to 2 agencies in the last few months that have had a relatively straightforward year. So I think regardless of industry, market, temp, perm, contract, people found it difficult. But I also think that people are fed up of it being difficult. And I know I am as well, almost kind of, I've had this sort of realization in the last couple of weeks. We're all talking about it all the time, how bad this year's been, how difficult. And the more we're talking about it, the more we're reliving it. Obviously it's still going on, it's starting to pick up, and it just creates more negativity and worry and anxiety, especially when we had the budget. Was it last week? I can't even think now. Was it this week?
It was
last week,
wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, it creates more worry and anxiety. And for me now, finishing off the year and going into the new year, I want to change that. And I know all agencies do. It's about a better, brighter future. So I think there's no denying, and I know it's not just me. I'm talking to not even other agencies, other industry suppliers like myself that work with the recruitment industry as coaches, trainers, back office support, all that kind of thing. Everybody's found it difficult and still is recovering from that, or still finding it difficult. So I think market wide that's prevalent, but I suppose I'm kind of trying not to talk about, people might say, well, you're being, my dad said to me the other day, or asked me about the budget, and I said, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm not paying attention to it. Well, you should do because of your business. And I'm thinking, I don't want to. I'm over all the bad news. Like, I just want to create this nice positive little bubble and just work through it. And I think from what I'm speaking to other agency owners, it's not that they're not being realistic, but they're also like over the negativity now.
Yes. And it's very much around mindset, isn't it? In terms of, you can have self-fulfilling prophecies. If you think it's all doom and gloom, well, that may be, what happens. Again, it's also about controlling the controllables of, all right.
Yeah.
And talking about coaching and training today, how do you bring in new talent and well coached and trained talent, to really help change that or shift that mindset in the business. How do you see that? And I certainly from your DISC, accreditation, what are the right types of mindset or attributes of people coming into recruitment are you seeing as really critical for agencies today?
I think the biggest thing, and this is even before the last couple of years, that people should be looking out for, and this is not just even rookies, this is any level. I think that resilience, there's two things. One is resilience for me. That is massive, because I think if you're somebody that's mentally resilient, and it doesn't matter how old you are, I speak to 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and you think, oh my God, they're so resilient for their age. That's what we need in this industry, because we are going to come out of this, but we're going to have another downturn at some point. There's cycles. It's going to happen. You need people that can cope with the ups and downs. It's not even just the next downturn in the market. If you think about recruitment in general, every day there's ups and downs. And if you get a little piece of bad news, or what you perceive to be bad news, and you let it ruin your whole day or your whole week, and you don't know how to recover from it, or you just don't want to, or you're not able to, you're not going to last. You need, I think in recruitment, your mindset is so important. It's one of the biggest contributors to your success, hands down. If you look at most top billers, I hate that term, but top billers, 9 times out of 10, their mindset, they are so focused, resilient. And the other thing that I think is important is attitude. That's what, when I'm speaking to newbies, they're the two things I'm looking at, resilience and attitude. And because you can train them on knowledge, even more experienced consultants, if you feel there's some gaps in knowledge still, maybe great, you can train them. But that attitude piece is very hard to change. And if you bring in somebody that has a bad attitude, to term it that way, ultimately it can be toxic to your business. I've seen it happen, and it's quite hard once you get somebody in that business, especially when they start to become actively disengaged, trying to bring everyone else down around them and the business. You've got a job on your hands then exiting them from the business. So I think attitude and resilience for me are top every time.
So if I were a agency leader or manager, and I've got 15, 20 recruiters in my team, maybe 1 or 2 who are possibly bad apples, who certainly can spoil the whole bunch. How do you kind of coach and support those leaders in terms of how should they be thinking about addressing these issues? And maybe there's some root causes of they're just not doing a good job overall in terms of bringing up the skill set or that mindset. How do you kind of help that?
There's a lot that goes into this, really. So I think there's one piece where, as a leadership group or as a leader, you need to sometimes look in the mirror and think, how am I managing these people? Do I really understand them? Am I modifying and adapting my behavior to suit the different individuals and their personalities and behaviors in my team? Because sometimes where it goes wrong is, and it's not even a purposeful thing, sometimes you're just managing how you were managed, or you think you're managing how you would want to be managed, but that doesn't mean that everyone in your team likes to be managed in that way. And we do often copy how we've been managed, and sometimes that's not the best way to do it. So I think there's that piece of, okay, do I need to go and, like, what I'll do with leadership teams is we'll behavioral profile the leadership team, put them through a accreditation. So I'll take them through their level 1 in DISC, so they understand themselves better, because we've all got blind spots. And then we profile the team, so they then know, okay, so this is how I need to adapt for each person, or that person I don't need to adapt that much for because we're very similar. And then what can really pay off is you sit down with each individual and you share your profiles with each other. So this is me. These are the things that I find challenging. I mean, for me, if I had just sat down with a manager early in my career, or at any point in my career, and they've been vulnerable with me, look, these are the things that I find difficult. If I'm a bit snappy on these sort of days, this is why. Don't take it personally, all that kind of stuff. But actually, this is the way I like to communicate. Our relationship with all my managers would have been 10 times better. And I would have really felt like I could be open and vulnerable with them. A lot of the time, where it goes wrong is there's communication barriers and conflicts. A lot of unsaid words, assumptions being made, things not being discussed. Whereas if there was more of an open, vulnerable, when I'm talking about the word vulnerability, it's not crying and getting upset all the time. I think that's what people think of. That's if people need to because they're upset, that's fine. But sometimes it's just being honest and authentic in yourself. So I think as leaders, sometimes we think, this is how I felt when I was a manager years ago. I've got to be perfect. I've got to be performing all the time, and I have to have all the answers, and I need to be driving results. And sometimes it really pays off with your team to be like, do you know what? I made a mistake. Or, do you know what? I don't know the answer to this, guys. What do you think? So that's one element of it. I think the other part of it is, don't assume that you've got an actively disengaged member of your team. We can make that judgment based on their behaviors, but you need to investigate it first because there could be anything going on in their life. So it's about questioning, how do you currently feel about your job, or how much you're enjoying what you do. Now, you've got to rely on them being honest. And this is where creating an environment where people feel like they can be honest is really important. But you've got to investigate it first before you kind of label them as actively disengaged. They could just be disengaged, which is a level back from that. And you can do something about that. That could be anything from not feeling heard, feeling like they need more training, more support. Maybe they've fallen out with somebody in the team, so they're not enjoying coming to work as much. They're just plodding along and getting it done, but not really got any passion anymore. So I think you've got to not give that label until you've fully investigated it first. So yeah, that's probably a really long-winded answer, but there's so many elements that come into it.
It's a fascinating topic, in terms of, as you say, a lot of the recruitment managers, leaders, owners have come from recruitment, that they know the craft, which is brilliant, but so often they're not really, fully skilled themselves in that leadership, that full leadership capability. So I think that's where, taking that leadership, train the trainer almost approach is right. And a lot of agencies, as we've mentioned, it's tough times. The budgets are tight for new technology or new, people coming into the business to help. How do you kind of frame the return on investment with working with you? Are there short-term wins? Is it more of a long-term kind of strategic investment? How do you kind of frame that?
It depends on what basis they work with me on. So I've got, short-term work that I do, 1 or 2 sessions sort of thing. Then I've got programs where I'm sometimes with an agency for a year.
Okay.
I think a lot of the time, what we're looking for is we want the consultants in some shape or form to change the way they're doing something, essentially, if we want to simplify it that way. And that, again, comes back to behaviors. It's not just the knowledge. That's one element of it. So when I'm working with a group or a person, I'm looking at, yes, I want to increase and enhance their knowledge, but I'm also looking to work on their attitudes, their habits, and skills obviously tie in with knowledge. But habits and attitudes aren't going to change overnight. That is, again, different speeds for different people, but that takes coaching and, that can take a bit of a longer, one session isn't going to miraculously change their habits. It'll be a good start. So I think it depends really. If an agency has got the ability or the function to, once I've done a couple of sessions, for example, continue with that support, really help it embed, work on their attitudes and behaviors, then, short-term work can work really well for them in terms of long-term change. If, however, they recognize, look, we need somebody external for all of our L&D because we don't have the functions to it. Our managers are very hands-on, which is a lot of agencies. The managers are billing. They've got a lot on their plate. It's one of the hardest jobs. You're juggling too much stuff sometimes. The directors are, in my experience, usually they either don't want to get involved in the training, they're not confident to do it, or even if they are, they just don't have time. Being an owner of a business, you've got multiple different things to be thinking about. So yeah, that's when it would be better to get me involved in the long term, because it's taking that off your hands, that responsibility. I take that on and we're looking for that long-term sustainable change then. Because what I find sometimes is agencies will be like, right, can you do a couple of BD sessions with the team? And they think that's going to solve all our problems. Kate's going to do 2 2-hour sessions with them. They're going to start bringing in loads of clients. They're going to love doing BD. All their attitudes are going to change. And that's not realistic, especially if they've never been trained before. You can get good short-term momentum, but you are then responsible for making sure they continue to implement it, as are they. They have to take on some responsibility. So you've got to look at what functions have you got internally to then know what do we need externally. So it's all dependent on what your agency has. But my aim is always to get them inspired and motivated quickly to start that change and then continue that change. So, they pick up the knowledge quickly, great, but it's the want to do it. That will needs to be there to do it, because we can teach them everything, but if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. So that's part of my job, is to inspire them to be like, I want to do this.
And whether it's, you coming in to help, a larger team who have the capability and resource to do it themselves over the long term, or, a smaller, medium-sized business where you're almost that, external long-term support. I really believe that having that as a function that's week on week, month on month, as you say, business development skills, great, go out, speak to some clients, maybe win one, but you'll get knocked back on, 9 and 10 initially. And so it's that feedback loop, isn't it? It's okay, having a debrief at the end of the week or end of the month of, here's what worked well, here's what I really struggled with, and really making sure you've got that coaching and training to continuous improvement. And if think about, well, actually I'm thinking about a number of guests we've had on the podcast recently who have talked a lot about AI, automation, data, and they've made some bold claims that they believe data is the most important asset in a recruiting, staffing agency. I guess, challenge to you in terms of where do you see data versus people in terms of the most important asset?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, I think data, I know data is very important, but I think to say it's the most important thing, I'd say your people are your most important thing. You wouldn't have a business if you didn't have the people. You wouldn't have the data. If you didn't have any staff doing the job, which is helping your business grow and sustain and be alive, you wouldn't have the data. We wouldn't have a business, but you wouldn't have the data either. So I think people first, 100%. If you get too fixated on the data only, this is where we get too many KPIs, too much focus on numbers. And what I see happen is the consultants get so caught up on the numbers themselves, nervous, anxious. They're not focused on the outcome and the quality, the point of the KPIs. They're just concerned of ticking the box. So, oh my God, I've got to make 20 BD calls today. So I'm just going to, oh my God, I've got to make those calls. They're not thinking about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they're trying to get out of it, what the point of it is. They're just ticking a box. So what you'll notice from the data as a result is it's shit. Sorry, I haven't even checked if I can swear on the podcast.
Yeah, no, we want to be real. We're in the sharpening ring. We need to get gloves off.
Oh, brilliant. So, your data's not going to be great because you're not going to be getting, okay, the call data numbers might be good, but if you go on from that and look at the data around how many meetings are getting booked, how many jobs are getting picked up, how many candidates are being placed, all that stuff, it's not going to work out because they're just focused on, if you get so fixated on data, that's going to flow to your people. If your focus is taken away from the people as well, and all those things we've already talked about, like the employees being vulnerable, connecting with them, communicating, all that stuff, I've seen it happen. You're going to suffer. You're going to notice the culture starts to change. People start to leave. And then you're going to lose some great people
I think we've hit on
who are hard to replace.
Yes. I think we've hit on a pretty important topic here, and that is how to balance and complement the machines versus the recruiters, right? And how are you seeing, or what's some maybe unconventional ways or kind of best practice you're seeing or thinking about in terms of giving recruiters more time to do their best work? So okay, we're taking care of some admin and through automation and AI, but on the converse, we're not having these machines take over their full role, so they're just anxious about their future employment or KPIs.
I think I've got a different view to some people. I have spoken to some people that I know well and respect in the recruitment world, and they're convinced that AI, we've only got a certain amount of time left until AI takes all over the recruitment industry. I personally don't believe that. And also I think that ultimately, if you believe that and keep talking about it, it will happen. Because what will happen is that I think the more that as recruiters, we get AI or automation to do the things that we should be doing, the more that it will take our jobs, will allow it to. I don't think AI has the capability ever to replace a live conversation with a client or candidate or a meeting. I just don't see it being possible. What I see that we should be doing and utilizing is using AI and automation for the tasks that aren't money generating, that take up our time. So for example, having, like I have a AI, oh God, I don't know what it's called, but note taker basically. So any meetings I have on Zoom, Google Meets, it sits there, it transcribes it for me. So when I finish the meeting, I don't have to type up all the notes. I can copy and paste it. I can concentrate properly in the meeting. You've got things, you've got software now that will allow agencies to do that with a phone call. So the consultants don't have to make, we know some consultants hate the admin. They don't have to make the notes. It goes straight into the CRM if it's integrated, or they just copy and paste it in. That's the kind of thing. Or, like confirmation emails for interviews, automate that kind of thing. That's what I think we should be using it for. Using things like ChatGPT. So you've got a business development meeting with a client. and you want to make sure that you talk about something in their market, ask ChatGPT, what's current in the construction industry at the moment that I can talk about in a business development meeting, because it saves time on prep. They're the things that I think we should be using it for. And it's, saving time, working more efficiently, allowing the consultants to do the activities that essentially are going to make them and the business money. That's what I think it should be used for.
I agree 100%. I think, if you look at time horizons, 1, 2, 3 years out, there's a massive opportunity for recruiters to leverage AI for their benefit and earn more, have a better experience in their role. As I say, examples like what Ringover does very well, and that is integrating all of that call and communication, transcripts and messages, summarizes, integrates into the CRM, ATS. And so, again, as you say, as a recruiter, you can be present on the call, not having to take notes, not have to think about next actions, because it's all done for you.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, look, I'm seeing on LinkedIn a lot at the moment, people getting really fed up with AI bots talking to them on message, right? And, even people questioning, is this an AI message, right? That's proof alone. People do not want to speak to a bot. They're already fed up of it. So this is why it baffles me when people say, oh my God, it's going to take over recruitment. People don't want to speak to a robot, client or candidate. They want to speak to a real person. Maybe a bot might book in the chat, fine. But in terms of that proper screening call with a candidate or that, business development relationship being built, they don't want a robot. The only thing that could happen, which I don't see being a terrible thing, is maybe an agency has 2 levels of service offering. So cheap is you deal with the bot, it's all AI related. Or, it might work differently for a candidate, but you could even charge the candidate a premium service. But with the clients, or you can work with a real person, and this is that fee. I would be very surprised if everybody picks the cheap bot version, because very quickly they'll notice the difference. I just don't ever see it happening. Honestly, literally yesterday, LinkedIn, I saw 2 or 3 posts from people moaning about either being messaged by a bot or the fact that they've messaged somebody on LinkedIn and being questioned if they're a bot. People are fed up of it.
I think, it certainly highlights, where a lot of your hiring managers, they actually need coaching of, the job description, of the attributes of what they're actually looking for, right? So there's nuances where I believe a lot of agencies can add more and more value. It's not just about placing a role. It's about actually coaching the client and the hiring manager to get the best outcome.
Yeah, being a consultant. So basically, the answer to this is really, if you want to be an average recruiter that just fills jobs, doesn't chase live jobs, doesn't focus on relationships, adding value, going over and above consulting, then yes, you can easily be replaced by AI. If you're just ringing around your target market, everyone, and do you need any staff at the moment, a bot can do that. If you want to be a exceptional, high quality recruiter, you're irreplaceable. So I know what I would rather do.
Love that. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up, the meat of this episode. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up with some quickfire questions, Kate.
Okay.
Your experience in recruitment's been incredible, and I think what you're now bringing to agencies is amazing. Is there any kind of advice or a quote that somebody's given you along the way that's helped you kind of stay resilient and do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I need to remember it more myself. I think it's the same with everything, isn't it? I'm great at giving people good advice, but we don't always take our own. But I think it's remembering that nothing anyone ever says or does is because of you. It's a reflection of what they've got going on in their own world. And I think in recruitment, where we get a lot of knockbacks, a lot of rejection in all shapes and sizes, it's remembering that. I used to literally have it on a post-it note in front of me on my laptop, because you are going to get no's. You are going to get people sometimes that answer the phone and are frosty. And you're going to get ups and downs as well in what you do. But it's just remembering it's never a personal attack. Again, it comes back to people being people focused. You can even remember this as a manager. It's what they've got going on in their worlds. And maybe you need to explore that before you judge or respond. But yeah, it's just remembering that it's a reflection of what's going on in their bubble. And if you keep taking things personally all the time and thinking it's all about you, then it's then going to affect your world and how you operate. So I read that in a book called The 5 Agreements by, Miguel. I can't remember the full name now. It's a brilliant book, but it's one of the 5 principles. Okay. So I try and remember that as much as I can.
Yeah. I'll look that up and put it in the show notes, the 5 agreements. So you've answered the next question of any books would you recommend? Any other books or podcasts or apps that you'd like to share with the audience?
So, I've just finished this book, which was brilliant. I didn't purposely have this next to me. It's just on my desk. So The Power of Systems by Steve Chandler and Trevor Timbeck. It's brilliant. Really, really good book. There is a really good app that I use, which is free, called Insight Timer. So again, I'm massive on mindset, as you've probably noticed now from this chat. So it's basically like Netflix for meditations, calming music, all that kind of stuff. There's like sleep music. And I use it every morning, every night. If you're a beginner in meditating, for example, you can do like 1-minute meditations. You can filter it down to what you want, but I find that really helpful to keep myself in a good place for how I show up every day, basically. So that's a really, really good app.
It's incredible how much research and insights have come to show, meditation is something that I've tried, but I've, not really got into the daily habit. But yeah, certainly
it's difficult, isn't it?
It is incredible how much it can transform mindset and just be able to be resilient day in, day out. We've all got pressures and ups and downs. So love that. And looking forward, Kate, what is there one thing that really excites you about the industry? I think there's, of course, a lot of challenges, and this is an industry that really provides a lot of value to candidates, clients, and the economy. So, what are you excited about in the 6-12 months ahead?
I think I'm excited because following every downturn, there's always an upturn. So I used to recruit for the pharmaceutical industry and saw it happen often. Massive redundancies followed by huge recruitment, and it's reflective in the cycles of recruitment as a whole. So I'm excited about the upturn we're going to have. When, we don't know, but I think that's the exciting thing. I think it's starting to change, and we need to look forward to that and be prepared for it. The more we sit around and wallow about what's been going on, the more we're not going to be ready for it to change. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned through my career so far is, when it's the quiet time, don't just chill and relax and think, oh, well, not much to do. Get ready, because the best consultants, the best agencies are creating opportunity out of even the challenging times. So I think I'm really excited about next year. Really excited. I think it's going to be a great year for our industry. And we're resilient. The recruitment industry is one of the most resilient industries for me. We always are okay. And I think it's telling yourself that like everything's always all right. It always ends up being all right. And I think next year's going to be a good one.
And that is a perfect way to wrap up this episode. Get prepared. I agree. There's always cycles, and our next opportunity will be a big upswing. So that is fantastic. Thank you, Kate. Really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you online?
Everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn every bloody day. Probably I've been on LinkedIn every day for the last 12 years, I think. So LinkedIn's a really good way to connect with me. I've got a YouTube channel, Kate O'Neill Coaching. So I've got loads of free videos on there.
Right.
Over 200 now, I think. But yeah, Instagram as well. But really, where I hang out the most is LinkedIn. So that's probably the best way to connect with me. Yeah.
Okay. Great. We'll drop all those links in the show notes, and please connect with Kate. A lot of great content online, and a lot of great experience. So thank you, Kate, and
Thank you for
we'll
having
see
me.
you again soon.
This production is brought to you by Ringover. If you're a staffing or recruiting agency wanting to improve and scale your client business development or candidate engagement, and you want to learn about the very best communication tools and tactics, you can find out more information by visiting ringover.com. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. And if you enjoyed this episode today, please leave us a 5-star rating. Thank you for listening to The Staffing Ring, and we'll see you in the next episode.